Okay, so this is a case entitled Pharmacy Service Improvement at CVS. CVS is a chain of pharmaceutical stores, drug stores throughout the US. And this case is actually split into two parts, part A and B. Part A actually describes a problem, a severe problem that they were having with a lot of customers walking away from them and actually becoming very dissatisfied, and it is posited to the reader to come up with a solution of a process that would resolve these issues. And part B of the case actually talks about how the company resolved these issues. Now, the case starts with a team that is assembled by the operations executives and managers by the CVS, referred to as the Pharmacy Service Initiative. So this team was brought together. The Pharmacy Service Initiative was created to solve this huge problem that CVS, which is America's largest retail drugstore, was facing. And the problem was that customers were actually becoming very disgruntled and very angry, and they were leaving the company, and the company was losing a lot of money, and it was actually causing a lot of problems to their actual growth. So the PSI was supposed to actually streamline the entire fulfillment process. The fulfillment process actually had 5 steps. The first step, which is referred to as the drop-off, was by the customers to actually come to the pharmacy, drop off their prescription, which is actually the receipt that they have received, or a form that has actually been given by the doctors, their physicians, describing the medicines that they're supposed to be getting. So it's on a letterhead. That's the prescription that's given to the pharmacy. Then the pharmacy technician would then take this prescription, put it into a wooden box that actually represents the queue of customers and their orders. So it's actually an order keeping instrument, this box that they have. Think of it as a file or a register. The next step was the data entry, and this would actually involve 2 steps in itself. The first was the automated drug utilization review. Now, the drug utilization review is a technical term that is used in the pharmacy industry, and it actually refers to the checking and reconfirmation of whether the drug that has been prescribed by the doctor is actually the drug that they are supposed to be taking for this particular disease, and the dosage is correct and everything is correct. So it's, in other words, it's like a recheck of the prescription with respect to the ailment, the problem that the customer, or rather the patient, is having, and whether or not the dosage is correct. So it's an essential and a very high importance task that needs to be done, because obviously if this is done wrong, the patient could possibly even suffer very severe problems, as well as even die if they take the wrong dosage, or if the prescription written by the doctor is incorrect, or if there are any issues with it. So all the potential problems are evaluated in this step. Then this is followed by the second step, that is the insurance check, which is to check whether the customer who is given this prescription is going to pay for this by themselves, or is the actual payment for the prescription, for the medicines, is going to be covered by an insurance that they already have. Now, once these are actually done and confirmed with, and then the insurance payment is actually then confirmed from the insurer themselves as well. So once all of this is done, the next step is the production and quality assurance steps. So this actually is related to the pharmacist reviewing all the prescription details and checking whether the actual pills, the medicines themselves, are the same ones as the ones written on the prescription, and the amount is correct, and then they're put up into sealed bags and are prepared in alphabetical order, ready to be picked up by the customer, who then arrives at the prescribed time. They arrive, they pick it up, and after they've made the payment, they are then actually given the prescription. This was the original flow. And the problems that were arising because of these flows was causing an estimated 7.2 million customers, who were their regular customers, to actually leave in year 2000 alone. So at the beginning of case 1, which is case A actually, in 2002, this PSI team, this pharmacy service improvement team that was created by CVS, was assigned the task to come up with a solution to resolve this problem. And the second part of the case actually tells us how they did it. So let's first look at the first part of the case and how that is exactly the problem that they're facing. Now, the case actually starts with the description, which is like a drama. They're actually discussing how these people are talking about the problems, and they said that there's a very severe problem. In Exhibit A, it actually talks about, and the Exhibit A is actually a very detailed discussion of the kind of things that are going to be processed during the entire fulfillment process, all the problems that they're facing. So if we go up to this exhibit A1 in case number A, we can look at the issues. So in the drop off, there are several issues happening. Nobody's watching in-store drop-off window. Sometimes there's no one there present. That's an issue that customers have faced. They go up there and there's no one there. There's an extended wait before anybody actually receives them or listens to them. Nobody responds to a drive-through situation. They're supposed to stand there and wait. The technician needs to oftentimes choose which customer to deal with, the one who's standing in the store or the one who's in the car driving through. The drive-through is often even closed. There are long waiting times behind someone at the drive-thru because somebody is there discussing and God only knows doing what. The customers called in to refill and then for the customer who's actually come in for a refill of their prescription is just asked to wait. I mean, if there's someone who's there with the prescription and say, I'm done with the pills, I just need more pills, the same ones that was on my prescription, they're asked to wait. The provider is actually the one who's actually giving it to them. They're being asked to be on hold if they make a phone call, that is. They are either busy on the phone. The fax machine is not checked when people actually send their prescriptions or details through fax, or even when the insurance companies send their details through fax. The customers are unable to find the correct drop-off location because sometimes the customer is told a very different kind of a drop-off location, which is not the store where they dropped off, where they're supposed to be dropping off their prescription. They're asked to go drop it off somewhere else. So they're unable to find it, or they can't find the pickup location too. So that happens a lot of times. The initial interview fails to obtain critical data. The initial interview of the customer done by the technicians doesn't get the right data. There's a lot of waiting time. The customers cannot verify their demographics. They are unsure of where the branch is located, where they're supposed to be. The customers are misfiled with the time slots, so that the time slots that they actually arrive at are not correctly noted down, which actually means that they are going to be given their order much later than they should have been getting it. That's also a problem. Customers with no refills are actually not informed, and they have to wait for like up to 3 days for it. They aren't even informed when the refills can be given again. There's incomplete information taken from the customers. The customers cannot be seem to be found later in the system because the information wasn't taken properly, and the lot of the calls and faxes aren't actually received. Now these are just the problems in stage 1. Okay, this is on page 9, exhibit 1. Now to look at the issues with data entry. Now the drug utilization review, which I said is the check and balance of whether the prescription is related to the issue and the dosage written by the doctor is all correct and all. So a lot of problems arise in that, and the pharmacist actually has to intervene and make corrections in it. There is no clear protocol for resolving any kind of third party problems. By third party, what it means is problems with either the hospital or problems with the insurance company. There is no real rules and regulation written down or processes written down how those will be resolved. Any kind of resolvable third party issues are usually issues related to money, because the insurance company does not actually respond in time or hasn't been contacted on time, and the customer is expected to pay, and those are a lot of problems that they're coming up with. Steps taken to resolve all of these issues are not recorded. So there's no track and record kept. If some issues were resolved for a customer, there's no recording of it. This is the data entry stage. So all of this needs to be recorded for any kind of future forecasting or analysis, right? The 90-minute time period that they have to spend, lead time on if they make a phone call, if a customer makes a phone call in the automated system, is usually not enough. When they ask you to wait for like a 90-minute time, after which we'll respond back, it's just not enough for third party issues to be resolved. So 90 minutes is usually not enough to contact the insurance company and get details from there. That's also a problem. The customers are not notified of any kind of third party issues. The customers don't even know. Sometimes the insurance company says, no, sorry, we won't cover this particular prescription. The pharmacy doesn't even bother to inform the customer. The insurance company obviously is not supposed to. This is the job of the pharmacy. They need to inform the customer that when they come up for the pickup, they need to bring in money because their insurer is not covering this particular prescription. So that they're not informed, so they're never even aware. The in-store process for handling the refill, there is no authorizations involved in it, because obviously they need to note down whether there is a prescription for it, and they need to note down whether they're authorized. There is no standard form for any kind of fax receiving and all. The faxes and calls are not done in a timely manner. They're left there. They just avoid, nobody bothers. There's There's also an issue of when sometimes the pharmacy needs to contact the medical doctor who's the one issuing the prescription, and oftentimes when the customer needs to contact the medical doctor again for whatever purposes, because maybe the pharmacy has recommended that, or maybe the customer needs to, that is not checked up again, even if that information has been written there. Because if, say for instance, the DUR comes up with the problem and says that the doctor probably wrote the wrong prescription, or that it's unreadable, or there are some issues with it, and then the customer needs to be informed that they need to contact the medical doctor again, and the medical doctor is never told that they're supposed to contact the customer again. Those are issues that they're looking at. Patients are not notified of the need to actually get a refill authorization, because even if you need a refill to a prescription, you still need to get an authorization from your medical doctor, and the customer is never told that they're supposed to get this, so they never get this. Then the integrated voice system, the call system, where you actually make a phone call, there's a long queue in that, there's a lot of waiting in that. The persons at the data entry are often sometimes not even able to read the handwriting, okay, and they can't read the handwriting, and therefore they can't write it down, and that causes problems, whether they are either reading it out to the insurance company or whether they're reading out to the technician who's actually doing the data entry. And the actual dosage and the actual medication itself prescribed is just not written correctly, and it's entered incorrectly in the data entry stage. That also causes problem later on. This is the second stage problems. Now comes up the production problems. So lot of scripts, which is the actual data, the actual information of which medicines to get for one particular customer, arrive separately. So there's a lot of hassle in trying to keep track of what medicines are required by one customer. So let's say customer 1 actually has 3 medicines that they require. So one of their script reaches the pharmacist who's starting to look for it in their pharmacy, and then customer 2's prescription arrives and they're looking for that too, and then 3 and 4, and then suddenly customer 1's medicine number 2 information arrives, and then they're looking for it too. So there's a lot of hassle. The technician cannot determine whether the called scripts, the ones that are actually coming in from the calls, are part of the same group. So if the customer made some updates on their prescription on call, or they asked for something on call, that is not connected with the prescription that they received at that point in time. So that's also quite the issue. Then there's a failure to properly prioritize the labels that they're printed on it. So there's no check and balance on the labels being printed on the medicine bottles and the boxes in which the medicines are going to be given to them. There is no issues being resolved of out of stock inventory. So in cases where they receive the customer's order, there is a prescription, they assume that it's going to be in stock, there's no record keeping, there's no update to the customer that it's not available right now and when it would be available. So they're not ordered on time, the customers are not informed about it on time, and the baskets delivered to the quality assurance people are out of priority. So the quality assurance people are supposed to recheck it, right? So the entire grouping of different medicines that they've collected for different orders are given out of priority. So say customer 1 was supposed to get it the first, while their orders are going to the quality assurance at the end of the day, while the customers are about to arrive to pick up their orders. So there's a lot of hassle. There's no proper queuing, there's no proper management of which customer is supposed to be served first, because they actually came in first and their pickup time is much earlier. Now in the quality assurance department and step, there are several other issues. The prescription is not filled correctly. That's a major issue that happens because of the hassles that I discussed earlier. The pill that they are actually being given is actually not recorded in the system. It's just not in the system. The pills that are required are just not in the system. Maybe because the specific brand name for the pill that's been given is not something that they can understand, and they don't know what the chemical name for it would be. So they have no idea what pill to give out, right? The hard copy image is in the system, but the one that's written down is actually not eligible. Not legible. It can't be read. The one written by the doctor themselves. That happens a lot of times. We already know that. Now the pharmacist is busy trying to handle other customers, so they are running around all over the place. They're not even available for the quality assurance steps. And as I said earlier, the quality assurance steps have to be done by the pharmacist. They're very important. The pharmacist also fails to announce different scripts that they are receiving, the different kind of medicines that they're collecting for one particular customer. So they're not paying attention to them because they're divided in so many places. Then comes the step for the waiting bins. The completed order is completely misfiled. It's noted down under a wrong customer. It's noted down with the wrong timings. The different prescriptions that they're receiving are not maintained as a group. So a single customer asking for 4 different prescribed medicines, they may be in 4 different customers' orders instead of actually being in one place, because they all belong to one single customer. So what would happen is, in reality, a customer would be asked to come and pick up their order at 4 p.m. and then 2 hours later you'll be like, but there's another order for you, and the customer will be like, why didn't you tell me earlier? I would have come at 6, or maybe come at 4 and receive both the prescriptions at the same time. Why did you mix them up? So that happens quite a bit, and there's a lot of issues about the sanitization that's also not being taken care of. But obviously that's a process related to the medical related stuff, not necessarily to the process of the order fulfillment. Now comes the last stage, which is the pickup stage. So the tech person, or the pharmacy service customer services rep or associate as they're called, cannot actually find the actual details of the order that they're supposed to give out at the pickup stage by the customer. The tech or the pharmacy service associate is only able to find some parts of it. They don't know the process that they're supposed to follow for it. They can't explain the insurance company problems to the customer, if there are any. So they can't explain to the customer why the customer is now expected to pay the full amount or half the amount, because the insurance company came up with some problems and they said they're not covering the entire medication or whatever. They're unable to explain because they don't have records of it. The technician is not sure if the doctor was called about the refill or not, if they were informed whether the customer got the call from the doctor for the authorization, or whether the doctor said that there should be a refill or not. They have no idea. The staff then obviously becomes very frustrated, and that translates into them being very rude. The pharmacist makes absolutely no effort to resolve the problems. They just wipe their hands and they just walk away. They're like, not our problems. There are a lot of long lines at the pickup because everybody is haggling there, they're arguing there, they're angry, and there are lots of other customers waiting for it. There are no additional registers open to actually make it easy. So there's just one line of pickup. Instead of having multiple kiosks or multiple windows, there's just one line. Nobody responds in the drive-through where people are in a rush. They just want to pick up their orders and move. But there's no one there. There's no one at the cash register so that they could pay in the drive-through with cash and just move away. The tech individuals or even the pharmacy service associates are forced to choose between either handling the line at the pickup or the line at the drive-through. They can only be at one place at a time. They are constantly running around. So drive-through is mostly closed, and there's a long wait behind someone who's at the drive-through and is arguing because they're probably getting some problems with the insurance company, and now they're expected to pay and they're not carrying enough cash or enough credit cards or debit cards to pay for it. Now, as you can see, these are a huge number of problems, and the case actually shows in Exhibit 2 actual sentences said by people, the kind of problems that they face. For instance, there's a lot of things that they hear for I always pay $15 for any drugs. Why is it $400? I'm supposed to only pay $15 for this, and I'm not paying from this. I'm not moving from this spot until I get this all cleared up, and you need to tell me why the insurance company is not paying. So there's a lot of stuff, or where is my prescription receipt? Where are my other medicines? Why are my medicines mixed up? These are not my medicines. Loads of problems. So in one single 8-hour shift, the Exhibit 2 says in one single 8-hour shift, there are a total number of 80 customers dealt, and 32 of those customers, out of those 80, actually had problems. Out of those 32 problems, 21 had problems because they had to wait longer than they should have. 16 customers said that their orders were not ready when they arrived. 9 of those customers said that they were being expected to pay more than they were expecting to pay because they thought the insurance would cover them, and they were never informed otherwise. And the 4 customers complained about the store related issues. For instance, they did not get the coupons, there was no sales, the stocks was not there, or whatever, some other issues. 10 is the number of times that the tech was asked a question that they were not qualified to answer. So they don't even have knowledge about things. For instance, when am I supposed to get a refill? Will my doctor call me for it? Will you call me for it? So tech guys don't even know that because they don't have the information for it. And the number of times that the tech was actually abused by a customer was 4. And the number of times the tech feels that they were responsible for something, they believe never. So they were never, they were often, mistreated, even though they were not even responsible for it. So these are some of the issues that I just pointed out. So it's quite the problem, which is why this entire process was actually undertaken. Now, the Pharmacy Service Initiative was designed to actually come up with a solution to all of this. So in order to understand, to make a solution, they first needed to look at how things were actually happening. So a lot of interviews were done, a lot of analysis were done to understand the kind of problems that the pharmacy was facing. So customers believed that switching was actually difficult to another company. They were still doing it because they were getting so angry about it. So CVS used to have about 29.5 million pharmacy members around at the beginning of 2000, and that was earning them about $20 billion worth of revenues. But the analysis showed that about 7.2 million regular pharmacy customers had left CVS in that entire year. And the total volume of filled prescription grew during 2000 because the company had actually attracted a lot of customers. But unfortunately, things were going really bad now. The regular customers who actually left actually resulted in a loss of about 55 million annual prescriptions, and that resulted in a loss in monetary value about $2.5 billion. That's a lot of money, right? So these interviews actually showed that there were a lot of issues. Now there's in the case there's a figure A which actually shows why people switched. So there's a bifurcation of light users and heavy users of the pharmacy, and for the prescriptions that they made, heavy users were going on for about 40 different times, 40 times throughout a year, while those who were considered as light users would actually go for much lesser number of times. Now, the reason for their switching was either because of the location that they were being asked to go and drop off or pick up their prescriptions from, the price and mail issues, the pricing issues, the services issues, the insurance issues. Heavy users, however, there were 6% of the customers, who left because of the insurance issues. So in most cases, for the light users, it was the location issues, and for heavy users, it was the service issues, which makes sense, and also the insurance issues. So these were some kind of problems that they identified. So how did the PSI team actually go about it after the analysis and interview? So they actually went into the field. They actually went and observed how the prescriptions were filled or not being filled, and how exactly the issues were happening. So approximately 1 in every 4 times they saw that there were problems and they were not resolved, especially at the customer pickup time. So this not only slowed down the pickup process for the customers when they were actually there to pick up their prescriptions once they were supposedly ready, but it would actually create a lot of issues. So during a single 8-hour shift, as I said, 40% of customers actually had complaints, as I pointed out by looking at Exhibit 2. So the people working in the pickup were the least paid, the lowest paid, and they were the least trained people. So they got the most complaints, and they got frustrated because customers were angry, and customers were angry for obvious reasons. So as I said, there were multiple stages in it. So there was a drop-off stage where the customer would actually come up and bring the script and drop it there for it to be filled. And each slot was assigned a specific times. For instance, if they received at 2 or 3 or 4 p.m. and so on, the tech would put the script into the slot and say that it would be received into a slot corresponding to an hour before the desired pick time. So say for instance, if somebody dropped off their prescription at 2 p.m. and their pickup time is estimated to be, let's say, at 6 p.m., then at around 5 p.m. the data entry step would start up. So the tech would actually put the script according to that time for the data entry process to start. Now the customers dropped off their prescription throughout the day, but the most busiest times were actually the drop-off window times before the work. Before going to work, people would drop their prescriptions off. They would either come during lunchtime to drop it off, or they would do it after the work. Regardless of when they dropped, the more customers wanted to pick up their prescriptions right after work. So that was also a hassle. That was also a problem. During the data entry stage, each hour a tech would actually sit down and actually take that hour script from the box where they were being kept, and they would then put in the data into the pharmacy's information system. They were actually manually inputted using the computers that they had, and an application was used by software application. They had an application for it, a pharmacy information system that was at all locations. That was connected to the CVS central database, so that was a good thing. All these 4,000 locations actually were connected to CVS's main database in their main branch, in the main headquarters, so to speak. And each required prescription actually required information of the patient as well as the doctor's contact information. It also required data about the third-party payers such as the insurance companies or even the employers, if the employers covers the expenses of the prescription. Details of the prescription itself, the medication, the dosage, the number of doses, and lots of stuff. So all of that had to be put in manually, and this was done just an hour before. In the earlier system, it was an hour before the pickup time. So that's where the problem started. Now, if you look at figure B on page number 5, it actually shows basic flow of the CVS's prescription fulfillment process. So there's drop off, then there's data entry, there's production where the actual medicines are assembled, then there is the quality assurance, and then there's the pickup. There's a diagram of the actual pharmacy itself where it actually shows the drop off happening. The arrow then goes up to the call being made to the doctor, or if it's not required, then the data entry happens. The pharmacist then goes to the production step. The production step actually requires them going to the shelves and picking up the medicines, putting them into boxes. The pharmacist then actually makes another step, which is the quality assurance step, in order to verify that the correct medicines have been put in based on the prescription. The number of pills or the amount of the medicine is correct, and then they would then put it up into the pile at the pickup stand so that it would be picked up. Now this was the actual the diagram that if you look at it you can understand. Now anyways, before we move on, we also need to look at the other steps. After the data entry, the step that was important, that was probably the most important step with respect to compliance to various rules and regulations of the health industry and the health associations, was the drug utilization review. Now the drug utilization review was a system that was necessary because it would check the script, the actual prescription, the actual medicines details against all the other prescription database for that patient. In other words, all prescription drugs that had never been actually given out by the CVS to that patient, and that had to be checked. So what was being checked was whether or not this particular patient who is being prescribed this medicine, have they been prescribed some other medicine that would interact badly with this one. So if, say for instance, they were being given out a drug, was it okay for them to take this? Was there any other issues that would arise if this same patient who had perhaps taken some other medicine and also was prescribed some other medicine 2 weeks ago that they picked up from us? So they're checking in the database whether it is okay to give them this drug. Now one would ask at this point, the doctor's probably done that. No. See, they may go to 2 different doctors who are both sending them to the same pharmacy to get their prescriptions. So it may happen that those 2 doctors don't know each other. So there's no connection. So it might be a possibility that they would accidentally, they don't realize it, they've given 2 different medicines that would interact badly for the customer, and obviously that could, in the worst cases, result in death. So the drug utilization review was a very important step. So they had to make sure the drug was appropriate for the patient, given their age as well as their gender and any kind of demographic information that's already stored in the system. So and there was also a separate application at the same time that handled refills, and that was done through a telephone. So this system stored refill requests until about 1.5 hours before the actual pickup time of it, and then this transferred it for the fulfillment to start with the drug utilization review. So they also received refill orders as well through the phone. Anyways, so the drug utilization review revealed any kind of problems, and if there were any problems, they would stop right away and the fulfillment won't happen, and then it would be reviewed by the pharmacist. So in a lot of cases, the pharmacist did not need to involve the customer when doing the review for the DUR, the drug utilization review. In fact, many people in the health industry actually consider it better for the customer to not be involved, because the customer would obviously say, I need this medicine. They won't even understand the technicalities of it, so they're not to be involved. So everyone at CVS realized that DUR was a very important point, step in the pharmacy operation, that it should not be moved, and any kind of review of moving this particular step anywhere should be resisted. They should not actually mess around with this step. This is a very important step, and this needs to still be in its place. Now, then the step after the DUR is the insurance check. So after the DUR was completed, and if there are no stops that are necessary, and if everything's fine, the insurance check would happen to check whether this customer had any insurance coverage, either from their employers or from the insurance company or from the government agency that they're working for. If that is the case, then the customer would only be expected to pay a very small amount, which is referred to as a co-payment. The major chunk of the payment would be covered by the insurance company or whoever's handling their payments. So when they actually come for the payment, they would have to pay a small amount. Now the issue is that there are a lot of technicalities in that. There are a lot of issues in that. A lot of cases, the pharmacy customers have a lot of third parties that actually pay for prescriptions, and in many cases complications arise because of the rules and regulations. Sometimes the pharmacy would realize that the insurance company is not covering it, and the customer would be expected to pay for it in full price. Sometimes the patients don't have the details available with them. Say for instance, a doctor would prescribe a drug that's not on the patient's formulary, which means that it's not on the insurance records. I mean, it's not allowed by the insurance company, and the patients don't really remember what is covered and what's not. So for instance, if a doctor has assigned something for your let's say diabetic issues, and maybe it's not covered by your insurance, or maybe a dentist asks you to go get some medicines and prescribe some medicines, and usually dentals are not covered by insurance, so they won't even know about it. So there are lots of issues with that. So a lot of cases, the rules would get violated, then they would realize that the customer has to pay for it, and obviously the customer is not informed, and that causes problems. Then comes the step for the production, which is the actual assembly of the medicines from the inventory, from the shelves where it's stored, into the boxes for the customers. So that's pretty self-explanatory, and the technicians would do that in the presence of the pharmacists, checking them again. Then there is a quality assurance step, where the pharmacist then checks again whether the medicines that were supposed to be in the box for a customer's orders are there in the correct order and there are no issues in it. So the quality assurance was obviously the pharmacist's job, and it was never given to anybody else except for the pharmacist. Remember that there are very few pharmacists, so they're involved in they are also supposed to do the drug utilization review, which will obviously result in problems. And then lastly, the steps from the data entry to QA could be completed in 5 minutes, the ones that we talked about, right? From the data entry, from the first step to the QA could be done in 5 minutes if there are no problems, but that wasn't always the case, as I already highlighted. Then came the pickup step, where once a script, which is referred to one order, once an order is ready and it's in a bag, the bag is stored in the pickup area in an alphabetical order. So when customers arrive, the technician actually handling the pickup window would just pick it up and give it to them after verifying that the customer is the one who they claim to be, and if required, then take payments from them. And that's where the problem starts, because as I said earlier, many cases the payments are not covered by insurance companies and the customers have to pay for it. So there's a lot of problems that happen during the process. So during the drop-off, they realize that there's unmanned window and all. I already discussed all of these problems, and customers would be very angry, waiting for someone to handle and be there and receive their prescriptions. During the data entry process, there were several issues. When the techs actually took the script from outside the box, and a lot of things would happen. They would realize that there are many scripts allowed the customer to refill the prescription at least once, but the customers would forget that they were only allowed to get one more refill after the dosage was ended, and they cannot get another refill, and they forgot they've already gotten one, and obviously they can't give it to them, so they don't even do the data entry. It stops right there, and then they were recorded that the doctor needs to be called for it. Okay, so there were two boxes in their cases. When they called up the doctor would either say, okay, go ahead, give them the refill, or they would say, no, don't give them the refill, and or that the doctor would call them back. So they kept records of these, but they never bothered. Say for instance, in the case when the doctor denied, they would just note it down that the doctor denied it. But the problems actually came from no refill allowed, because the scripts required 20 minutes to 3 days to actually be resolved, and that wouldn't happen. So the no refill allowed scripts were about 6% of the scripts, and they would just wait there until a customer would come up for the pickup, and they were told, well, you're not allowed refills. So that would happen much later. And imagine a customer waiting for their orders and then coming in there and realizing that their refills aren't even allowed, and oftentimes they wouldn't follow up with the doctor. The pharmacies people wouldn't. The drug utilization review hard stop, as I said, was also a problem. So 20% of all the scripts had these problems, which means that they were being prescribed a medicine that would interact badly or would react badly because they were taking some other drug. Say for instance, they were taking an antibiotics course, and this other medicine that they were now asking for would react badly with that one, and that would cause problems. So they would stop right there. Insurance checks, as it says, about 17% had problems with the insurance checks. As I already mentioned, there are several problems with that. Many insurance companies would just refuse to cover it, and then that could cause problems. And the customer, when they actually came up for the pickup, that's when they would realize that they are supposed to pay the full price, and they weren't expecting that, and they would be very angry, and they were probably not even carrying that much cash, as I said. So production quality assurance, The only problem usually identified the production step was that the inventory just didn't have that medicine, and they didn't even know, and they agreed to the customer that they will provide it to them at the end of the day, and when the customer arrives there, they're like, sorry, we don't have those drugs with us right now. So that was an issue. So pharmacists would diligently keep on keeping a record there, but oftentimes they would miss out, and there were inventory issues. During the pickup, as I said, there were loads of problems, because a lot of people would actually be coming up at the same time. They'll be coming after work. Now many issues were like would actually cause problems here. Payment issues, not enough inventory, refills not happening, data being misread, miswritten during the data entry process, loads of problems. So most CVS locations found it very difficult to staff people at this time during the 5 and 7 p.m. because the pharmacy employees just did not want to work at that point in time, because they realized that customers were very angry during the pickup stage. So nobody wanted to work in the pickup window, nobody, because the customers were very angry at that stage, and most of those technicians weren't even prepared for it, and they were getting really bad salaries. They were getting very low salaries at that too. So imagine the lack of motivation of those people. So pickup is where customers actually wait in line. So they get bad news like, oh sorry, it's not covered by insurance, or sorry, we don't have it in inventory. They would get screaming and shouting and lots of fights. So the question was, how will you resolve all of this? Now here's my little tidbits on how it should be resolved. Now I suggest that one of the best things that the pharmacy company needs to do is to start integrating their system. And I'll talk about the solution that they came up with, but these are my solutions for it. So the first thing that the company, in my opinion, needs to do is to integrate their systems with those of the hospitals around them. The ones that are closest to them should have their systems integrated with the pharmacies, with all 4,000 branches. Now you'll be like, how would they connect with all 4,000? They don't need to. They need to just connect with the main server, the main database of the pharmacy. That way, when a doctor is actually prescribing prescriptions to their patients, they would choose the generic name for the medicine instead of a brand name that later might or might not be in the inventory. So when they're prescribing it, when they're actually in front of their own health management or a hospital management system during the prescription process, when it's about to be printed, the system should actually show the possible medicines and their chemical names and the possibility that they can give them. And this data should be shown based on what is already available in the inventory of all the locations. Then at the same time, if it is properly connected, they could even tell the patient the closest location based on where the patient finds it more convenient and where the closest location to the hospital is, so that the patient could leave right away, or whoever they are attending them with leaves right away and goes to the closest CVS pharmacy and picks it up from there. That would solve a lot of the grievances of the customers. They'll be less angry if they realize that they're being told the right location to go drop off their prescriptions and then pick them up later, right? So that's one part of the solution, in my opinion. Similar to how doctors and the hospitals themselves should be connected with the database, the second thing that needs to be connected with the database of the pharmacy is the insurance companies. Now that will be a tall task because there are so many insurance companies and so many government agencies and employers, but they need to keep a record of it. They need to actually get information, because most of the customers are heavy users. So their old customers, their databases can be maintained, their insurers data can be maintained. So they need to keep a record of what is and is not covered by a particular insuring company. With that information, they can actually tell the customer at the drop-off point, during the very time when the customer actually drops off their prescription, the technician there could immediately check whether an insurance company will cover it or not, so that they would inform the customer there and then that when you actually come up to pick it up, you'll either have to pay the full amount or it will be covered by the insurance company. And they won't even need to contact the insurance company for it. This would be done right there and then. So if there are any issues, if there is bad news that the customer has to pay for it full, the technician would tell the customer right away, and then the customer can make a decision of whether they want to continue with the order or not for the prescription. So that will solve a lot of problems. Then another thing that needs to be done, and that is very important, is that instead of doing the actual data entry an hour before the pickup time, it should be done right as soon as the prescription is dropped. So as soon as the customer actually drops the prescription, and the insurance issue is resolved, the customer leaves, the technician should sit down and start doing the data entry right away. Okay? Why? Because if this is done earlier, any kind of issues that happen later on could be resolved earlier on. This will help quite a bit. So what needs to be done for that? This entire wooden box thing needs to end. There needs to be a proper information system, multiple computers in every pharmacy, multiple technicians, because those are cheaper. They're just data entry specialists, and they would sit down and enter their data into their databases. Everything, the name of the patient, the name of the doctor, the prescription details, everything, it needs to be put into the database. This will help with something else, because people are coming in for refills, people are coming in regularly, there are people coming in 40 times a year. This will help do inventory forecasting. So the shortage of inventory issues, that will get resolved. Those already get resolved when the doctors are already prescribing medicines that are already in inventory, and you already know based on the requirements of a hospital what is required by that location's pharmacy. But now when a customer actually comes in and gives you an order, and you already put that data into your system, you know what is going to be required in the next few days or a few hours. So even if you don't have it, you're going to ask the customer, you're going to update them. You have their contact, you're going to update them and tell them, please pick up this order from so-and-so branch where it is in inventory. So the inventory would be better managed. Another thing that needs to be done is that the drug utilization review process and the quality assurance process needs to be merged. And it needs to be done at the same time. Okay? It needs to be done right after the data entry system. Right after that. Because that is a huge problem that they are missing out, because that's a redundancy happening, because the quality assurance for the medicine being checked is being done by the pharmacist, right? And the drug utilization review is also being done by the pharmacist. Now imagine first the pharmacist needs to do the drug utilization review, which is a much more serious step. Then after a while the same pharmacist is asked to check for that particular order or some other order. They're supposed to go and check whether the medicine is actually put correctly in the box. Why not do both steps at the same time? Because it's the same pharmacist, it's the same order. That way they will check on both accounts. They will check whether the particular medicines is acceptable, and that they can be given this medicine, and it will not badly act with some other medicine that the patient is already taking. So it passes the drug utilization review test, as well as the quality assurance of whether the right amount of dosage and the right amount of medicines are put for the right customer in the box. So that would help quite a lot. So as I said earlier, the insurance check is happening earlier on. The drug utilization works with the quality assurance step. Now when the customer actually arrives, the data has already been recorded right after they left. The inventory has already been managed accordingly. The insurance check happened in their presence. So if there were any issues, we resolved it with them right away. Now when the customer arrives, there are no surprises for them, right? They're not suddenly worried. They're like, oh my God, I'm supposed to pay more amount. That doesn't happen anymore. And there are no inventory shortages, so the customer gets their orders correctly. Since the quality assurance and the drug utilization review happens together, the pharmacist is not confused and not pulling out their hair, running around here and there. They are doing both things at the same time, and they are required for both stages. So they are doing it at the same time. They're checking whether the medicines are acceptable, as well as whether the order is correctly made. So there are no bad orders during the pickup time. That's also resolved. And in case there is no inventory available at one location, the customer can immediately be called up and told to pick it up from some other location. And that information can be sent through the information system that all of these 4,000 branches are connected with, and they can be updated. The customer won't get a surprise where they come up to the pickup and realize, oh, but my medicine is not available because, well, the order is not ready because there is no inventory. So that won't happen anymore. Also, in between we talked about refill issues. Now that the data entry is happening earlier on, there is ample time for any refill issues to be resolved. So, and the system actually has the record for it. So if there are refill requests, the information can be sent to the medical doctor through the connection between the insurance company and the hospital directly. So they can immediately send a notification to the doctor to confirm whether this particular medicine or prescription is allowed to have a refill, and that's done automatically. So there's no phone calls involved, there's no waiting time involved. The doctor could send an approval, a digital approval directly from the software that's integrating the health management, the hospital, and the pharmacy itself. So this is, in my opinion, the ways in which this could be resolved. Now the questions that are present in this particular case about this entire scenario are so the changes we've already talked about. Now that's obviously the question. So how can we be sure whether this new process will actually be an improvement on the new one, the old one? It will be an improvement. Why? And it won't make things worse. Why? Because one of the major reasons is that this is coming from the top down. This new enterprise information system, these new processes are coming in from the top management down below, and there is no real change happening. Nobody's being asked to do anything extra. Nobody's being robbed of their power or of any kind of decision making capabilities. Everybody still has those, and they're still responsible for the same thing. So there's no real change happening at that stage. So nobody can complain about it. There are no issues there. Plus it's coming from the top down, so they'll actually be happy about it. Also, the process is supposed to resolve the grievances of not just the customers but even of the employees there. They're already quite angry, they're quite tired of the kind of issues. So what groups, if any, are likely to have problems with your proposed solution? So the usual issue would probably come up from the pharmacist saying the drug utilization review is not being taken seriously, but it is still being taken seriously. We didn't move that around. That was the only thing that they would have a problem with. The insurance companies will not have a problem with providing this information because this would only make their lives easier. The doctors would be happier to give the right kind of prescriptions. They would have that data already, so their patients won't complain to them that their patients are not getting the medicines from the right places. The patients won't complain. The doctors would be happy. The patients themselves, the customers, would be very happy. So there's no group that would have any problems. If any of them had any problems, they could be resolved. The insurance companies could be told that this would only increase the chance of customers getting more insurances, because once they have a more streamlined process, once they're told the actual prices of the medicines they're getting beforehand, they can then talk to their insurance companies and maybe increase their coverage plans if they want to, right? So that will only help them. The doctors could be convinced by telling them that you would no longer have to worry about patients not getting or taking their medicines at the right time, or the patients being angry, or the hospital being sued because they were given the wrong drugs, or the doctor didn't give them the right drugs or the right dosage, whatever. The doctors are safe, the hospitals are happier, no issues. Now the biggest question, how will we be sure that people would actually use this new information system, this new process, and they won't just move back to the wooden box methodology they were using, where they were just putting it all in one wooden box and just starting with the data entry an hour before the pickup time? So there are two ways to actually catch that. One, everything is recorded on the system, so the audit happens automatically. Two, the kind of speed with which data entry is done is actually recorded on the system. There's a log, right? It's actually maintaining a database of when the entries for data entries were made. So if the customer order times are maintained, and we know that if a customer, say for instance, made an order at 4 p.m., then the data entry for his order or their order should happen within the next 5 or 10 minutes. But if all the data entries are happening an hour before the pickup time, so if a 4 p.m. order usually would mean that the order pickup time would be, say, 8 p.m. for instance. So if the data entries are mostly happening around 7, that means people are still using the old system, and then that branch, that culprit branch, could be caught. So it's very easy. Plus the complaint would go down at that particular branch. So if anybody goes back to the old wooden wooden box system, the old system, then that would be caught, because their efficiency would not improve. Their data entries would not get registered at the headquarters main database, the main CVS database, because they're all integrated, they're all connected. It won't get informed there. So does the pharmacy service initiative actually represent a significant opportunity for CVS? Yes, of course it does, because this would improve their customer services quite a bit, and it would actually lead to a significant financial benefit to the company. Why? Because this will retain customers. A happy customer is a retained customer, and a retained customer will attract more customers. In fact, this kind of system would probably be so loved by hospitals as well as various insurance companies, and even by customers, that they would increase their integrations with this pharmacy. And that actually happened. That's what's discussed in the other cases as well. So what percent of pharmacy defectors from CVS in 2000 were light versus heavy users? Now that's another question there. So the larger percentage that actually left for the heavy users, because obviously they were angrier. Even though the switching cost for them was high, they were angrier. But the light users were the ones who would eventually, maybe later in their lives, and maybe because they're buying it for some other people, would become heavy users. So there was a loss on both ends. So yeah, that was also an issue. So now if we were to look at the second case, which was case B, and look at the solution that they came up with, the solution was pretty similar to what I just recommended. They did not talk about integration with the hospitals or insurance company, but they did talk about moving the order entry to the earlier time, right after the customer left, after the drop-off. They also suggested, and they came up with a solution, that the insurance issues would be resolved when the customers were dropping off, before they leave. So they would talk to the customer, talk to the insurance company, and explain to the customer whether it will be covered by insurance during the drop-off point. not waiting until the pickup time. So they changed that too. Plus, as I recommended, and that's what they did in case B as well, they said that the drug utilization review and the quality assurance would be merged and will be done together. So apart from that, case B actually has nothing new to offer. That's what they did, and the adoption of the system was pretty good. It was pretty well accepted by most parties, and almost all 4,000 of the branches started doing it, and the system already had this monitoring capability, so it was very easy to keep an eye on which pharmacy branches were following these new processes and which weren't. Those who weren't could easily be caught because everything was already recorded on the system. So this particular entire case, to summarize, is all about how a business process re-engineering, a process change, could actually bring in a lot of better customer satisfaction, and that sometimes it's not a matter of changing the process completely, but perhaps just changing the steps and the sequence of steps, looking at the pros and cons of keeping a particular step at a certain time. Also, this case stresses the importance of top-down, heavy-handed, strong-handed adoption of a new information system. Sometimes it's necessary. We've talked about it in other cases where a top-down approach was not suggested, but in this case it is. And bringing in all parties and advantages of all parties together, if you're able to do that, if you're able to bring in changes that actually make every other party happier without actually changing their roles or without actually asking them to do anything extra, that usually increases the chance of a particular process to be implemented easily and the change to be accepted easily. So that's it for this case on pharmacy service improvement. I hope you are able to understand it better by listening to this audio recording. Thank you.